Society has always been built on control. No matter the century, no matter the empire, those in power have relied on the same tools. They offer promises that keep people obedient. They spread fears that keep people quiet. And they create illusions that keep people busy chasing shadows. These are the invisible chains that have bound most of humanity for thousands of years. But history shows us a strange paradox. While the vast majority bend to these chains, there are always a few who slip through. Men and women who refuse to be bought, who cannot be broken, who expose the illusions for what they are. They do not fit neatly into the scripts society writes for them, and because of that, society does not just fail to control them, it secretly fears them. Think about it. The rulers of Athens could execute Socrates, but they could not silence the questions he left behind. The Roman Empire could crucify rebels, but it could not kill the idea of freedom that spread from them. In the 20th century, governments could censor books, but the words of Orwell still echo louder than ever. Power can punish the body, but it has never fully captured the spirit of those who live beyond its reach. So here is the question for you. In this grand game, are you simply another piece on the board, moved and sacrificed without even realizing it? Or are you one of the few pieces that the game itself is afraid of? This video is not about rebels in the streets or revolutionaries with weapons. It is about something deeper. It is about the 8 types of people who, across history, have proven almost impossible to control. People who can walk through fear, who can see through illusions, who can live without the chains that bind the rest. From the philosophers who rejected wealth, to the writers who risked everything to speak the truth, to the thinkers who saw power for what it really was. These are the 8 kinds of individuals that society cannot contain and will always secretly fear. Type 1. The one who needs nothing. Erich Fromm once warned us that modern society tricks people into believing that happiness comes from what they own. He called it the mode of having. If you collect enough money, enough possessions, enough titles, then you will finally feel secure. But the truth is the opposite. The more you need, the more you can be controlled. Think about how this works in daily life. A man with a large mortgage cannot risk speaking against his employer. A woman buried in debt will swallow her opinions to keep her job. The fear of losing what we have is often greater than the pain of never living authentically. And so the system buys our silence not with money given, but with money already owed. But then there are the rare ones who step outside of this trap. The monk who gives up everything and still smiles. The philosopher who owns almost nothing, but carries a mind richer than kings. Even in modern times, the minimalist who decides to live with little and discovers that freedom grows as possessions shrink. These people remind us of a simple truth. The one who needs nothing cannot be bought. Society secretly fears this kind of person because they are impossible to bargain with. What punishment can you give to a man who has already let go of comfort? What temptation can you offer to a woman who is not interested in your rewards? Control requires leverage, and without needs, there is nothing to hold on to. Fromm believed that real freedom is found not in having, but in being. Being present, being alive, being true. The shift from having to being is the first cut in the rope that binds most of us. So ask yourself honestly, if your money, your title, and your possessions were stripped away tomorrow, who would you be? Would there still be something left that cannot be taken? Or would you find that the chains were never outside of you, but within? Type 2, the one who masters himself. If the first path to freedom is needing nothing, the second is mastering yourself. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus knew this better than anyone. He was born a slave, beaten and humiliated, with no possessions of his own. Yet, in one of the harshest conditions a man could endure, he discovered a kind of freedom no master could take away. He realized that the world could chain his body but not his mind. The Stoic insight is deceptively simple. We cannot control what happens to us, but we can always control how we respond. And in that response lies true power. Most people spend their lives being pulled by every emotion, every desire, every fear. An insult sparks anger. A loss brings despair. A compliment feeds vanity. They are tossed around by circumstances like a small boat on a violent sea. But the one who has learned self-mastery is unshakable. He feels the anger rise, but he does not let it dictate his actions. She feels the sting of loss, but she does not collapse into hopelessness. Their freedom lies in the small gap between stimulus and response. And in that gap, society finds nothing to hold on to. Control always works by manipulating emotions. Fear to keep you obedient. Desire to keep you chasing. Rage to keep you distracted. If you cannot be provoked, tempted, or shaken, then the chains fall loose. Society does not know what to do with someone it cannot stir. Epictetus taught his students that no one is free who is not master of himself. And that is why self-control terrifies those in power. A man who controls himself is not controlled by others. So reflect for a moment. Are your thoughts and emotions truly your own, or do they belong to every politician, advertiser, and authority who knows which buttons to push? Do you act from reason, or are you just reacting to the world's endless attempts to provoke you? If freedom begins with needing nothing, it deepens with mastering yourself. And it is this mastery that turns ordinary people into those society cannot command. Type 3. The one who faces the shadow. If mastering yourself means gaining control over your emotions, facing the shadow means confronting the darker truths you hide from yourself. The psychologist Carl Jung believed that every human being carries a shadow, a hidden part of the personality made of fears, shame, desires, and impulses we refuse to acknowledge. Society thrives on this denial, because what you will not face, others can use against you. Think about it. A man terrified of his own aggression can be manipulated through guilt. A woman who hides her ambition can be controlled by promises of approval. The shadow you suppress becomes the hook that power uses to pull you. As long as you are ashamed of your own depths, you remain vulnerable to anyone who threatens to expose them. But when a person has faced their shadow, something remarkable happens. The guilt loses its grip. The fear dissolves. The illusion of being a good citizen in the eyes of others no longer holds sway. Society no longer knows how to shame someone who has already embraced their flaws. And because of that, such people become almost untouchable. History gives us many examples. The whistleblower who risks everything by exposing corruption has already accepted the cost of being hated. The artist who bears their pain in public can no longer be humiliated by it. The thinker who acknowledges his own darkness cannot be silenced by moral outrage. These are the people who cannot be controlled, because their enemies have nothing left to use against them. Jung warned that what you do not make conscious will control you from the shadows. But when you integrate it, you gain a kind of wholeness that society finds deeply unsettling. It cannot frighten you with your own reflection. So consider this. What is the part of yourself you have buried because you fear how others would judge it? What if, instead of hiding it, you faced it, owned it, and turned it into strength? The one who confronts the shadow is not perfect. They are whole. And wholeness is something society cannot command because it is beyond the reach of shame. Type 4. The one who leaves the herd. If confronting the shadow frees you from shame, leaving the herd frees you from conformity. Friedrich Nietzsche warned that most people live by what he called herd morality. They do what the group does, believe what the group believes, and fear what the group fears. This gives them safety, but it strips them of freedom. The herd offers comfort. When you follow the crowd, you rarely stand out. You are protected by numbers. But the price of that comfort is that your thoughts are not really your own. The crowd teaches you what is right, what is wrong, what is respectable, what is shameful. And in obeying these rules without question, you allow society to write your script for you. Nietzsche believed that true freedom begins when a person dares to walk away from the herd. He called such individuals the creators of values, people who do not simply inherit the morality of the many, but invent their own path. They are not reckless rebels who oppose for the sake of opposition. They are thinkers and creators who refuse to let the collective decide the meaning of their lives. History remembers these people not as comfortable citizens, but as dangerous outliers. The scientist who refuses to bow to accepted dogma and instead discovers a new truth. The artist who refuses to copy the style of the age and instead defines an era. The reformer who challenges sacred traditions because he sees a higher vision. At first they are mocked, feared, even hated. Later they are often celebrated as the very voices that moved humanity forward. Society secretly fears the one who leaves the herd because they expose the crowd's greatest weakness. That safety in numbers is an illusion. No matter how loud the collective shouts, one individual with courage can make the noise meaningless. So ask yourself, are you willing to live with the comfort of belonging, even if it means living by values not your own? Or are you prepared to face the loneliness of leaving the herd so that you can finally stand on ground that is truly yours? The one who steps away may walk alone, but it is in that solitude that freedom begins. Type 5. The one who lives authentically. If leaving the herd means breaking away from the comfort of the group, living authentically means facing the deeper truth that Søren Kierkegaard warned about. He declared that the crowd is untruth. What he meant was that the collective does not simply blur individuality. It actively destroys it. To surrender to the crowd is to trade away the most important possession you have, your own self. Most people live in what Kierkegaard called despair, not despair in the usual sense of sadness, but despair as a refusal to be who they really are. They adopt the roles that society offers: the obedient employee, the respectable citizen, the agreeable neighbor. Each role gives acceptance, but at the cost of authenticity. The tragedy is that the person who hides behind these masks may never actually live their own life. The authentic individual chooses differently. They refuse to bury their inner truth, even when it separates them from others. They may be misunderstood, ridiculed, or ignored, but they remain faithful to their own existence. Kierkegaard himself lived this path, standing against the comfortable Christianity of his time, insisting that faith was not a ritual of the crowd, but a personal leap into the unknown. Society secretly fears the authentic person because they expose the falseness of collective identity. They remind everyone that beneath the roles and rituals, there is a self that cannot be replaced. And once a person realizes this, control becomes nearly impossible. How do you govern someone who does not measure their worth by your approval? Consider your own life. How many truths about yourself have you hidden just to fit in? What have you sacrificed so that the crowd would call you normal? Kierkegaard believed that the greatest sin was to die never having become yourself. That is why the authentic life is feared. Because one person living truly is a mirror that shows everyone else how false their own existence might be. Type 6. The one who needs little. If Kierkegaard taught us that authenticity requires courage, Henry David Thoreau showed us that freedom also requires simplicity. In his book Walden, he described leaving the noise of society to live alone by a quiet pond. He grew his own food, built his own shelter, and lived with as little as possible. He did not do this because he hated the world, but because he wanted to discover what was truly necessary for life. Thoreau realized something profound. The more we want, the easier we are to enslave. Debt, endless consumption, the pressure to keep up with neighbors, these are not signs of freedom. They are chains disguised as choices. A man who constantly needs more can be directed anywhere because he will always follow the promise of the next reward. But the one who needs little is beyond reach. If you can live with simplicity, you cannot be blackmailed by luxury. If you are content without excess, you cannot be trapped by the game of status. Society depends on people buying into its machinery of endless production and endless desire. Step outside of that machinery, and the gears lose their grip on you. History shows this pattern again and again. Think of the sages who left palaces to live in huts, yet gained influence that kings could never match. Or the modern individuals who deliberately reduce their needs, rejecting the treadmill of consumerism. They often find that by needing less, they actually live more. Society secretly fears these people because they reveal a dangerous truth, that the race for more is not natural, but manufactured, and that the escape is as simple as refusing to play. Ask yourself honestly, if the system collapsed tomorrow, could you survive? Or has your dependence on comfort and consumption left you powerless without it? Thoreau believed that when you strip life down to its essentials, you discover a freedom that no institution can take away. The one who needs little is the one who cannot be forced into the gears of the machine. Type 7. The one who speaks the truth. If needing little frees you from material chains, speaking the truth frees you from the prison of lies. George Orwell understood this with brutal clarity. He lived through times when governments twisted language itself, when propaganda reshaped reality, and when silence became a survival strategy. In such a world, Orwell wrote words that still burn today. In a time of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. Most people do not lie because they love falsehood. They lie because lies are safe. They repeat the slogans everyone else repeats. They keep quiet when they know something is wrong. They trade truth for comfort, believing that silence will protect them. But silence never protects for long. It only deepens the power of those who manipulate the story. The rare ones who refuse to stay silent are the voices that societies most fear. Orwell himself was attacked for exposing the dangers of authoritarianism. Writers and whistleblowers throughout history have faced exile, prison, or worse for revealing what those in power wanted hidden. Yet their words outlast the punishments because truth has a strange endurance. Once spoken, it cannot be unsaid. Control always relies on deception. People can only be ruled completely if they are convinced that the lies are reality, but the truth-teller punctures that illusion. And one person speaking truth can unravel the stories that hold millions in place. That is why societies fear them, not because they are violent, but because they reveal that the violence was always there, just hidden under false words. So consider your own life. What truths do you silence in order to keep your place in the world? What deceptions do you accept because it is easier than confronting them? Orwell believed that language could enslave or liberate. To speak clearly, even when hated for it, is to live free. The one who speaks truth is beyond control because he tears away the very mask that society depends on. Type 8. The one who understands power. If speaking the truth exposes the lies of society, understanding power exposes its foundation. Niccolò Machiavelli is often remembered as cynical, even ruthless, but his real gift was clarity. He saw politics without illusions. He understood that behind noble words and lofty ideals, power is always a contest of strength, strategy, and perception. And the person who understands this game cannot be easily manipulated by it. Most people live inside the illusions that society builds. They believe that authority is sacred, that leaders act for their good, that laws are neutral. These beliefs make control possible. They keep citizens obedient, not by force, but by faith in the system. But Machiavelli stripped away the theater. He revealed that rulers maintain power not because they are virtuous, but because they understand how fear, loyalty, and image can be used as tools. The one who understands power cannot be deceived by appearances. He knows that institutions are not gods, but structures built by men, and therefore fragile. She sees that every system of control depends on consent, and that consent can always be withdrawn. To such a person, authority loses its aura. It becomes something human, flawed, and negotiable. History has always feared these individuals, dissidents who see through propaganda and recognize the mechanics of control. Citizens who understand how fear is used to manufacture obedience. Thinkers who expose the stagecraft of politics. These people cannot be ruled in the same way as the rest, because they no longer mistake the play for reality. Society secretly fears the one who understands power because they cannot be ruled by myths. They see the game for what it is, and once you see the game, you are no longer a pawn in it. So ask yourself, do you believe in the structures around you because they are true, or because you were taught not to question them? If the foundations of power are illusions, then the moment you recognize them, you begin to step outside of their control. The one who understands power is feared not because he destroys it, but because he reveals that it was never as solid as it appeared. Looking at these 8 types, it might be tempting to imagine that they are rare figures born with extraordinary strength. But that is not the full truth. None of them began as untouchable. They became untouchable by breaking the specific chains that hold most people down. Each type represents a path of escape, a way of cutting through one layer of control. Society governs through 3 main forces: fear, desire, and illusion. Fear of punishment, desire for reward, illusion that the system is natural and unchangeable. Most of us live our entire lives inside this cage, believing it to be freedom. But each of the 8 paths we have seen is a way of stepping outside one part of the cage. Fromm shows us that if you do not need possessions, you cannot be bribed. Epictetus shows us that if you control your inner life, you cannot be provoked. Jung shows us that if you accept your shadow, you cannot be shamed. Nietzsche shows us that if you leave the herd, you cannot be absorbed. Kierkegaard shows us that if you live authentically, you cannot be replaced. Thoreau shows us that if you need little, you cannot be trapped in the machine. Orwell shows us that if you tell the truth, you cannot be silenced. And Machiavelli shows us that if you understand power, you cannot be deceived. Taken together, they reveal something profound. Freedom is not a single act, not one great revolution, not even a final victory. It is the slow peeling away of illusions. It is the steady cutting of the ropes that bind us, and each rope is cut differently, depending on which chain you are most bound by. This is why society fears these people. Not because they are many, but because they are mirrors. When you meet someone who cannot be bought, you are forced to face your own price. When you meet someone who cannot be provoked, you see how easily you are controlled. When you meet someone who cannot be deceived, you realize how deeply you live in illusion. They are reminders of the freedom that could be yours, and that is why their presence unsettles even the most powerful. So the question turns back to you. Which chain holds you most tightly? Is it the hunger for more, the fear of loss, the need for approval, the comfort of the herd, or the trust in authority? What would it mean to cut just one of these chains? Freedom is not given by society, it is reclaimed from it. And it is reclaimed step by step, chain by chain, illusion by illusion. That is the deeper truth beneath these 8 types. They are not different species of human. They are examples of what happens when ordinary people refuse to play by the rules of control. Society fears these 8 types of people not because they are numerous, but because they are proof that control is never complete. It takes only one person who cannot be bought to reveal how fragile wealth really is. One person who cannot be provoked to show how weak fear truly becomes. one person who tells the truth to show how hollow lies always were. The presence of even a single free individual threatens the illusion that the system is unbreakable. The truth is, most of us will never fully embody all 8. But that is not the point. Freedom does not demand perfection. It demands courage. The courage to take one step beyond the chains that hold you. The courage to risk being misunderstood, ignored, or even hated in order to remain whole. So here is the challenge. Which of these paths speaks most to you? Is it the courage to live with less, the strength to master yourself, the honesty to face your shadow, the audacity to leave the herd, or perhaps the clarity to see power for what it really is? Whichever it may be, the choice is always in front of you. Remember this: society can only control you as long as you play by its rules. The moment you step outside, even in a small way, you begin to taste a freedom that no authority can grant and no authority can take away. So ask yourself now, before this video ends, are you content to remain a piece moved by the board? Or will you begin the journey of becoming the piece that the game itself fears? Leave your answer in the comments. Which type do you feel closest to? Which type do you wish to become? Because the first act of freedom is not escape. It is naming the chains you will no longer accept.